Hello, it's Medium Jenny Leem here with the next raw contact discussion. We're on session 18, which would make this video number 19. This session is not quite as long as the last two, but it's still a pretty good length, so let's get into it. All right, Dawn's first question. The first distortion of the law of one might cause me to mix erroneous data with the true information that is transmitting to this group. Do you do this? We don't do it intentionally. However, there will be confusion. The errors which have occurred due to the occasional variation in the vibrational complex of this instrument due to the ingestion of a chemical substance. It is not our intent in this particular project to create erroneous information, but to express in the confining ambience of your language system the feeling of the infinite mystery of the one creation and its infinite and intelligent unity. Whew, okay. So, Carla's taking some sort of chemical substance that's causing a little bit of problems. And Dawn innocently asks, what is this chemical substance? And then, come to find out, it's LSD. So now I want to know, was Carla taking LSD all this time? Was she taking LSD the whole time they're doing all these sessions? What in the hell? I mean, I realize it's 1981 and the whole drug age was not that far behind in the past. But Carla. Okay. It does not give poor contact if it is used in conjunction with the contact. The difficulty is the particular substance is that there is a very dramatic drop-off in the effect of the substance. In each case, this instrument began the session with a distortion toward extreme vital energy, which this substance produces. But then, during the session, at the point where this substance is no longer was in sufficient strength to amplify the entity's ability to express vital energy, it's a spotty contact. And the instrument relies again upon its own vibrational complexes of vital energy. The vital energy being, in this case, very low. It became necessary to abruptly cut off communication in order to preserve and nurture the instrument. This particular chemical substance is both helpful and unhelpful in these contexts of the causes given. So it doesn't sound like she's taking it every time because I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much she was taking. Because if she was taking a little dose, then it would have been like, the session would have been short. And if she was taking a big dose, then the session would have gone longer. So, Ross saying that the LSD caused her to have an increase in vital energy, which was good at the beginning of the contact time, but once it wore off, it made her downgrade of energy even worse. And that's when information can come through like a spotty, like a radio that's not coming through all the way correctly. Maybe you hear every 9 words out of 10 or something. Okay, so I'll just say my particular stance on drugs is this. It's my absolute favorite quote from Salvador Dali, and it's exactly how I feel. And I even tell it to my students sometimes when they ask me if I've ever done drugs. Salvador Dali's quote is, "I don't need to do drugs. I am drugs." And that's exactly how I feel. I don't need to do the LSD because I can already do some weird stuff. So I don't know what would happen to me if I did such a thing. My brain might literally explode. So anyway, next. All right, are there any other foods that are helpful or harmful? The instrument has a body complex distortion towards ill health. Poor Carla. So she needs to ingest, I love that they call it foodstuffs, grains and vegetables. It's extremely unimportant with in regard to aid with the equality to other aids such as the attitude, which this instrument has in abundance. So she has an excellent attitude. So the food is not necessarily all that important, but in order to give her more vital energy and less ill health, she needs every once in a while to eat some meat. Did you hear that? All my vegan, vegetarian friends. Unfortunately, meat gives us a lot of good energy. Not that you have to eat it, but sounds like Carla needed some every once in a while. And it would lessen the distortion toward the low vital energy. Okay, so this is a question from Jim. And let's see. What's the proper role of the individual self in its worldly activities in aiding an entity to grow more toward the law of one? The proper role of the entity in this density is to experience all things desired, then analyze, understand, accept the experiences, distilling from them the light and love, the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That is not needed. That which is not needed falls away. So this becomes a very different kind of way of looking at things. Because Ra's saying we don't need to overcome things. We don't need to overcome something. We have to analyze it, understand, and accept it. And I think the key there is the acceptance. But it says experience all things desired. So that's good. The orientation develops due to the analysis of desire. These desires become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love light as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. We have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires except to suggest the imagination rather than carrying out in the physical plane of those desires not constant with the law of one, this preserving the primal distortion of free will. So they're saying you can think about doing anything you want, and anybody can really do whatever they want because of free will, but if it's not going in line with the law of one, then they suggest that you only merely think about it and not do it actually. The reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating difficulties in balancing in the time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. How true is that? How true is that statement right there? Overcoming thus creates the further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. It's almost like if you are having to overcome in a traumatic experience, or you're having to overcome a situation or a bad relationship, or whatever it is that we think of when we think of having to overcome something, when you by using the term overcoming and the emotions that go along with that, it's almost like instead of working through it, it's been conquered somehow. And I think by the emotions of it feeling like we've conquered it, it's like an accomplishment. And because it's an accomplishment, we hold on to it instead of just letting it go. because it becomes part of us. I overcame this. I conquered that. So it's an unbalanced distortion. Because if you're holding on to it like it's an accomplishment, you're not really letting it go. You're not releasing it. And that makes a lot of sense. You're not letting it completely disconnect from you. And it's still always going to be a part of you. And if it's something that you needed to if it was something that was so bad you needed to overcome it, shouldn't you just completely sever it from your being? Do you have to, how necessary is it to feel that you accomplished, you conquered? I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I understand what Ra is saying. But personally, I don't know how I feel about it. But I get it. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity. And in experiencing and understanding and accepting and then sharing with other selves, the appropriate description shall be moving away from the distortions of one kind to distortions of another, which may be more consonant with the law of one. So instead of holding on to it like an accomplishment, we should understand it, accept it, and share our experiences with others. And then it will move away from us. And in sharing it with others, we're helping other people to understand and accept their own things that they feel like they need to overcome. It is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care and compassion for self and other self. So you definitely can't ignore it. That's so true. But to simply overcome it is not good either. Understand, accept, share with compassion for yourself and others. I kind of like that. Okay, can you state any other breaking of the law of one than the free will? As one proceeds from the primal distortion of free will, one proceeds to the understanding of the focal points of intelligent energy which has created the intelligences or the ways of a particular mind-body-spirit complex in the environment, both of what you call natural and man-made. Okay? Thus, the distortions to be avoided are those which do not take into consideration the distortions of love, light, or logos in your particular sphere or density. These include the lack of understanding of the needs of the natural environment and the needs of other selves. So, not understanding what our natural environment needs, the earth and man-made, and the needs of other people. These are many due to the various distortions of man-made complexes in which the intelligence and awareness of entities themselves have chosen a way of using energies available. It's a lot of words. Words and words and more words. Okay. I think it becomes clearer as we continue. Thus, what would be an improper distortion with one entity is proper with another. We can suggest an attempt to become aware of the other self as self, and thus do the action which is needed by the other self, understanding their intelligence and awareness. And in many cases, this does not include the breaking of free will, as you would call an infringement. So not to infringe upon someone else's free will. However, it is a delicate matter to be of service, compassion, sensitivity, and ability to empathize are helpful in avoiding the distortions of man-made intelligence and awareness. So this paragraph really spoke to me quite a bit. So doing one thing for or with one person might be right or wrong for somebody else. And then, so they're suggesting that you become aware of somebody else. You see them as self. And because you see them as self, you do what action is needed to understand the other person's intelligence and awareness. And that should not involve infringement upon their own free will. And it's a very fine balance to be of service, to have compassion, to be sensitive to them and empathize, all without distorting their intelligence and awareness. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because it can be really easy to give somebody advice. But if they're not asking for it, and you can feel like you know what someone else should do, what's the best thing they should do, but sometimes they gotta learn stuff on their own. And but if you're coming towards them with empathy, compassion, and understanding, without feeling like you have to control their life, then I guess you're doing okay. In the social complex, there's no particular need for care, for it is the prerogative, honor or duty of our particular planetary sphere to act according to its free will for the attempted aid of the social complex. That's a little confusing. Thus, you have two simple directives: awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in nature, so know that all things of Earth have an intelligent energy. Awareness of the intelligent energy expressed in self to be shared when it seems appropriate. So when you know your own intelligent energy and share it when it seems appropriate. That's also a very key word there. By the entity with the social complex. When is it appropriate to share that you know about intelligent energy? Okay. And you have one infinitely subtle and various set of distortions of which you may be aware, with respect to self and other selves, not concerning free will, but concerning harmonious relationships and service to others as other selves would most benefit. So all of this free will stuff is like a slippery slope of which many arguments could be had. Because and I had, it's 11:11. I had a small bit of conversation about this with China the Frost yesterday. And with the law of free will, it's basically like, shouldn't everyone have the free will to do whatever they want? Because that's what the law of free will is. You can do whatever you want. But China the Frost's argument is that a lot of people don't know that they shouldn't do certain things. Or I guess in some ways they have desires that instead of just keeping them to themselves, they would act upon that are hurtful or harmful to others. So therefore, we need to have laws and rules in a society. However, I feel like, particularly in the United States of America, there's too many damn laws and rules. We just keep making more laws and rules, and it's ridiculous. Like when I was in college for learning to be an art teacher, we read a book. I don't remember what book it was anymore, but in the book it said that the United States has more laws than all the other countries in the world combined. Do I need to repeat that? More laws than all the countries in the whole frickin' world put together. Why? Because there's a need and a feeling that we need to control other people's behavior because of whatever the hell. Okay, let's continue. Okay, next question. Is there an age below which an entity is not responsible for his actions? This is a very good question, Dawn. An entity incarnated upon the earth plane becomes conscious of self at various points. A median age is approximately 15 months. That's pretty young. Some entities become conscious closer to incarnation and some further away. In all cases, responsibility then becomes retroactive from that point backwards in a continuum, so that distortions are to be understood by the entity and dissolved as the entity learns. So roughly around a little after a year old, we become conscious of ourselves. But then even the stuff we did before that becomes part of our learning and understanding and our karmic path, sounds like. So then Dawn says, say a 4-year-old who's totally responsible for their actions goes against or in a harmonious way of the law of one. Or no, is a 4-year-old who's responsible for their actions, can they go against the law of one? Yes. But it may be noted that it is arranged by the social complex structures that new entities of incarnation are provided guides of a physical complex so they can learn quicker. And then Dawn asks, who are the guides? Their parents, teachers, and friends. Duh, Dawn. Yeah. Kids have adults that teach them right from wrong. And then here we get into some interesting stuff. Once again, Dawn flips the switch here onto something different, and he asks about Aleister Crowley. So Aleister Crowley, if you're not familiar, is an English occultist from like the late 1800s, in early 1900s. And he started his own religion called Thelema, which, as I was researching some more about Aleister Crowley, even though I did know quite a bit about him, curiously enough, claimed to have a contact with an alien entity called Lam that was supposed to be from Mars, that lives on the dark side of Mars, or he lives on the dark side of Mars. I don't know if he's from Mars, but that's weird. I didn't know that. Okay, so Aleister Crowley wrote, "Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law." He's obviously talking about the law of free will here, which is part of the law of one. So then he asks, where is this entity now? This entity is within your inner planes. He's having to go through a healing process. Did this entity then, even though he intellectually understood the law of one, misuse it and therefore had to go through the healing process? This entity became overstimulated with the true nature of things. This overstimulation resulted in behavior that was beyond the conscious control of the entity. The entity thus, in many attempts to go through the process of balancing, as we have described the various energy centers being the red ray and moving upwards, became somewhat overly impressed or caught up in the process and became alienated from other selves. This entity was positive. However, its journey was difficult due to the inability to synthesize and harmonize the understandings of the desire of self so that it might be shared in full compassion with other selves. This entity thus became very unhealthy in a spiritual complex manner. It's necessary for this type of distortion towards inner pain to be nurtured in the inner planes until such an entity is capable of viewing experiences again with the lack of distortions toward pain. So, not to call out Giant of the Frost, but he's always had a particular interest and kind of almost an affection for Aleister Crowley. Partly because I think like that Ozzy had a song about him or something. But no, like Giant of the Frost really thinks, like, he really does go with this, do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. Like, you should be able to do what you want. Philosophy, which is part of the law of free will, which is, we were just talking about that. But I always had, like, whenever he would, like, talk up Aleister Crowley, I would always just kind of be like, And I never could understand why I felt that way. But everything that Ross said about Aleister Crowley right here is exactly what I felt about Aleister Crowley that I couldn't put into words. And as I was reading about him even more for this, discussion, he completely overstimulated himself. He spent like his whole life going to different places and studying all this stuff. And it's just like one thing after another, after another, after another, after another. And it's like, I don't think he really gave himself the time to process all the information that he was getting in a balanced way. Like, I don't know if he was fully taking in the information in a personal figuring it out himself way. And because he was so caught up with all the learning that he alienated himself, I feel like he kind of also put himself up on a pedestal. And then he didn't, and this is the biggest part, he didn't disseminate the information he had learned with compassion. Because he had alienated himself, he wasn't fully seeing others as self. He was really starting to see it as just like self, is the way I feel. And I don't know all, this is just my sense of knowing. I don't know enough about Aleister Crowley to know if that's true or not. It's not like I knew him or anything. But my sense of knowing tells me this is true. And what Ra is saying here makes me feel like that's also correct. So really, he was a positive entity who was trying to learn so he could teach, learn, teach. But he just, I don't think he properly learned the balancing part, clearly. So, really interesting. All right, next. Yesterday you stated that forgiveness is the eradicator of karma. I'm assuming that balanced forgiveness for the full eradication of karma would require forgiveness not only of other selves, but forgiveness of self. Correct? Correct. Forgiveness of other self is forgiveness of self. An understanding of this insists upon full forgiveness upon the conscious level of self and other self, for they are one. A full forgiveness is thus impossible without inclusion of self. So forgiving yourself, forgiving others is forgiving yourself. It's all connected. All right. Do all the confederations serve the infinite creator in the same way, or do some do specific things? All serve the one creator. There is nothing else to serve, for the creator is all there is. It is impossible not to serve the creator. There is simply various distortions of service. Each confederation is a group of specialized individual social memory complexes, each doing that which is expressed to bring into manifestation. So, Ra really wants to make it clear. Everybody's serving the one creator, but yes, they do have specialized things. Could you tell me how Yahweh communicated to Earth's people? Now, if you watched yesterday's video, you heard me mention that Yahweh gets real confusing now, because originally when Ra started talking about Yahweh, Ra made it sound like Yahweh was a bad dude from the Orion group. Like the Orion group sent Yahweh down to Earth, to the Israelites, with the intent to do self-service. And he's the one who gave Moses the 10 Commandments. Like, that's what the damn book said. But now, shit's gonna get real confusing. Okay. The first communication was what you call genetic. The second communication was walking among your people to produce further genetic changes in consciousness. The third was a series of dialogues with chosen channels. Okay, remember, they changed the bodies of Earth so that the people from Mars could have some bodies to come into. And then it sounds like they changed the genetics even more because they were walking among the people, and then they started channeling. What's the deal with these genetic changes? How are they brought about? It's a form similar to what you call the cloning process. Can you see my WTF? But remember, when Ra originally talks about how the Confederation came and modified the bodies, the bodies that were here on Earth to hold the entities, souls of the people of Mars, that they created the bodies in a non-reproductive way. So this is it here. Thus, entities incarnate in the image of Yahweh entities. Thus, entities incarnated in the image of the Yahweh entities. So what? That's like straight out of the Bible, right? God created us in his image. Yahweh is the name of God. What? The second was a contact of the nature of, sexual. Yikes. Changing the mind-body-spirit complex through a natural means of the patterns of your reproduction, devised by the intelligent energy of your physical complex. All of this sounds terrifying. What in the hell? Ay. Okay. So, can you tell me Yahweh's purpose in making the genetic sexual changes? The purpose, 75,000 years ago, of the changes subsequent to that time were of one purpose only, that to express the mind-body complex those characteristics would lead to further or more speedily development of the spiritual complex. And I wrote what here, but I know what that means now. They were making bodies that were going to be functional for a third density spirit. How did these characteristics go about leading to the more spiritual development? The characteristics which were encouraged included sensitivity of all physical senses to sharpen the experiences and the strengthening of the mind complex in order to promote the ability to analyze these experiences. So sensitive physical senses and being able to think about them and, analyze, think about experiences. When did Yahweh act to perform the genetic changes? The Yahweh group so what does that mean? Worked with those of the planet you call Mars 75,000 years ago in what you would call the cloning process. They are differences, but they lie in the future of your time-space continuum, and we cannot break the free will of the law of confusion. So what? Oh, the differences in the cloning process. So not cloning in the way that we clone stuff now, but they can't tell us what the differences are because we haven't figured it out yet. So this is saying that the Yahweh group are the entities that created the bodies for the souls of Mars to come into. How? I guess, why are we just hearing this now? I guess because Dawn asked the question now and not before. So then this 3,600 years ago, approximately the time of the attempts by those of the Orion group during this cultural complex, there was a series of encounters in which the ones called Anak were impregnated with the new genetic coding by your physical complex means so the organisms would be larger and stronger. This part gets really, really weird. Okay, so the Yahweh group are the people who made the human bodies for the Mars entities to be able to have bodies to come into. But then 3,600 years ago, which they have said, Ra said already, that the Orion group came and tried to, attempted to do some stuff. Apparently they gave some new genetic coding to this the Anak people, to make them larger or stronger. So I had heard this name before, but I did not know what it was. So I looked it up. So Anak, the actual word, is a homophone for a giant long neck necklace in Hebrew. Conquest of Canaan by the Israelites. Anak was the forefather of the Anakim. 10 of the 12 Israelite spies, said to be very tall descendants of Anak, their giant stature was standard for which all other giant races were measured. So Anak was like one dude, and they sounds like the Orion group impregnated his wife with some new genetics, and they created this Anakim race, which were freaking huge, which is exactly what Ra said. They're larger and stronger. Why would they make them larger and stronger? Now here's where stuff gets real confusing. I'm so confused. Okay, so yeah, here's the word Yahweh again. The ones of Yahweh were attempting to create an understanding of the law of one by creating mind-body complex grasp capable. Okay, hold on. I'm so flustered I can't even talk anymore. The ones of Yahweh were attempting to create an understanding of the law of one by creating mind-body complexes capable of grasping the law of one. The experiment was a failure from the view of the desired distortions due to the fact that rather than assimilating the law of one, it was a great temptation to consider these people a subcomplex as elite or different and better than others, which is the techniques of the service of one. Okay, so what in the hell is happening here? Because if I remember correctly, the Confederation were the people who fixed up the human bodies. But it's saying the Yahweh group, which alludes that the Yahweh group was from the Confederation. But earlier, Ra said the Yahweh group was from the Orion group. Now it says the people from the Orion group came and made the Anak people. But then it says the Yahweh group made the Anak people, which alludes to the Yahweh group as part of the Orion group. It gets more confusing. Okay. Do you mean that the Orion group produced this larger body complex to create an elite so that the law of one could be applied in a negative sense? Incorrect. The entities of Yahweh were responsible for this procedure in isolated cases as experiments in combating the Orion group, suggesting the Yahweh group was part of the Confederation because they're trying to go against the Orion group. However, the Orion group were able to use this distortion of mind-body complex to inculcate the thoughts of the elite rather than concentrations upon the learning teaching of oneness. So was Yahweh then of the Confederation? Yahweh was of the Confederation, but was mistaken in his attempts to aid. Then the Yahweh's communication did not help as they wished it. The results of the interaction were mixed. Where the entities were of a vibrational sum characteristic which embraced oneness, the manipulations of Yahweh were very useful. Wherein the entities of free will had chosen a less positively oriented configuration of sum total vibratory complex, those of the Orion group were able for the first time to make serious inroads upon the consciousness of the planetary complex. So let's stop there for a second. So Yahweh is of the Confederation. Then why did Ra say that they were of the Orion group earlier? Was that a miscommunication? Was that one of these erroneous details? Is it because Carla was taking LSD? I don't know. But I'm so confused now. I don't know what's happening. But anyway, so it sounds like the Yahweh group thought that by making this new breed of humans that they were going to do some good. But instead, the free will of the entities caused them to think that they were better than others. And therefore, the Orion group, for the first time, was able to start changing the consciousness of our planet. So Yahweh, you done really messed stuff up. Why did you do that? Oh my goodness. Okay. Which just goes to show the fallibleness of all entities. Because here are they supposed to be higher density, more intelligent, have more experience, they've ascended to another plane, entities, and they're making like the stupidest mistakes. They make just as many stupid ass mistakes as we do. And in some ways, their mistakes are even worse because they're on a huger scale. But maybe they learn a little bit quicker because, as far as I know, they never did it again. After that, they were like, we're never going back there again. We're not going back there again. We'll try to keep stuff good from here. We're going to put up a little fence. We're going to keep tabs on this Orion group, and we're not going to mess with them anymore. Because you guys done screwed it up. You screwed it up royally. All right. Can you tell me specifically what allowed the most serious of the inroads to be made by the Orion group? Specifically, those who were strong and intelligent have a temptation to feel different from those that are less intelligent and less strong. No shit. This is a distorted perception of oneness with other selves. It allowed the Orion group to form a concept of the holy war. Fan-frickin-tastic. This is a seriously distorted perception. There were many of these wars of a destructive nature. You ain't telling me. And let's go back for a second. The conquest of Canaan by the Israelites was through this frickin' Anakims. 10 of the 12 Israelite spies were Anakims. And it was used for war and destruction. Goodness gracious almighty. Okay, that's the end of this session. And when I read this the first time, I didn't get nearly as upset as I just did reading it out loud to you guys. But now I'm really angry. Anyway, to summarize this session, don't do drugs, people. That's my advice. Meat will give you more energy. Not that you feel like you should have to eat it. The next thing that we went over was a bunch of stuff about free will, accepting instead of overcoming, how to come to people as other selves through yourself, through the law of one. A little bit about the social complex of that, but not enough to understand it. We're pretty much responsible for all of our actions for our whole entire lives. Talked about Aleister Crowley, that was fun. And then we got into this really, really confusing back and forth with the Yahweh and the Orion group, and we learned about the Anakim, which is a grave mistake of the Confederation, because it allowed the Orion group to really get a hefty ground in our planet and started holy wars. Thanks for that. Okay, guess we're not leaving on a happy note today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Join in on the discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts about all this stuff. And I'll be back with another one. I'll see you later. Bye.